Well, hello guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to a familiar airplane that you've seen in the past. So this Sebart PC-21, we have done some work on it in the past on the channel, and this time around we are going to be installing the new Xicoy Turboprop into this plane. We've got a new tank for this airplane as well too. This is the very first tank from CM Jets that started getting numbered, labeled, and weighed. So thank you, Carlos from CM Jets, for the tank. It is going to fit beautifully in this airplane. So hopefully, guys, the goal is that this engine bolts into the Wren bolt pattern easily. We'll see what happens. Maybe this will be easy, maybe it won't. But let's roll that intro and we will get started. Alright guys, if you have not seen the Xicoy Turboprop test video, I'll throw a link down below where we did some test runs and stuff on that engine before it goes into this aircraft. So first thing we need to do on this aircraft is we need to take the cowl off. We may need to put this aircraft on a different stand. But we need to take the cowl off and see if this engine will, well, obviously remove the Wren engine. So this engine is supposed to bolt up to the Wren bolt pattern. So the Wren uses a circular bolt pattern. So there's like 6 screws that go through in a circle pattern. And the Xicoy is supposed to hit 4 of those, I think. So my fingers are crossed that we don't have to redo the firewall on this plane. If we do, we'll do it, whatever we need to do. But that's kind of what we're up against right now. So first thing is pull this cowl off and get the engine out. I knew there was a pretty significant difference in size, but it's really not until you get these things side by side do you actually notice that. Man, that is crazy how different that is. So one of the obvious differences with the Wren is all your structure from the turbine itself to the gearbox is handled by this cylinder, I guess if you want to call it that. On the Xicoy, it's all handled by this rigid beam setup. So both are really good. I think the Xicoy is a lot better, a lot more advanced. I mean, the Wren is an old engine, right? And then also just the finishing. I talked about this on the unboxing of the Xicoy. I mean, you look at the welds on this thing, it's amazing. You look at the Wren, and it works. But anyways, guys, so that is a picture of what we're up against. Now, it's supposed to work in 1, 2, 3, 4. Those 4 holes, so obviously not the top and the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the bottom part of this cowl off. I'm going to pull the canopy off. So basically we're going to get this engine out, and that is going to be the next step. And just like that, guys, engine is out. So this will give you a better size comparison of these two engines. What a massive difference. That is absolutely incredible. Wow. So the measurement from the back of the mounting plate here to the back of the prop washer is like 165 millimeters. Exactly the same measurement as the Xicoy, so that's good. I don't know if the pipes are going to fit. So that's one thing we'll have to check. We may need to order new pipes. We can still run this without pipes as long as it sticks out of the cowl enough. But yeah, it's just incredible the size difference. We'll weigh this as well too to see the physical difference. We'll take the pipes off first. And there's a bit of a different shot for you guys. New technology versus old. All right, so weight difference. Now keep in mind when we weigh this, the Xicoy has its solenoid valves underneath the cover. The Wren does not. So we actually, the Wren is technically a little bit lighter right now, not much, just the weight of the valves, but we'll measure these things up and see. So the Xicoy is 1,671 grams for just the engine itself. The Wren is 1,956 grams. Wow. So what does that mean on this plane? Well, we basically are losing 300 grams, which is almost 3/4 of a pound off the nose of this aircraft. That is an incredible difference. Yeah, absolutely mind-blowing. So obviously we're going to have to re-CFG this plane because we are changing it dramatically. So one other little note here is the outside diameter of the exhaust tubes themselves are exactly the same. They're 45 millimeters. So that's a positive because our old exhaust tubes will work on the new engine. All right, guys, it's a sad day here at the lighter side of RC. One of my really, really good friends, companions, co-workers has been lost. And so bent screwdriver is missing. Actually, bent screwdriver's missing. Happened a couple weeks ago. I know exactly where it happened. We were out flying at the farm. End of the day, I left bent screwdriver on the wheel well of my trailer, drove away. The next weekend, I was at another event out at the Alberta's Littlest Airport event, and looking for bent screwdriver. Nowhere to be found. So bent screwdriver is somewhere in the farm field. I don't think we will ever see bent screwdriver again, but fortunately Murray stepped up to the plate and provided bent screwdriver's replacement. So trusty bent screwdriver is gone. I don't have a name for this one. Maybe we'll just continue calling it trusty bent screwdriver. If you guys have any ideas, comment down below. All right, guys, continuing on with the PC21 Xicoy engine installation. So essentially the mounting bolts, thank you, trusty bent screwdriver's replacement. The mounting bolts line up basically perfectly on those four. The downside is that these are not big enough. So the bolts we were using before were these guys here. I don't know offhand what size they are, but anyways, they're an imperial thread. If we were to use them on the Xicoy, there's lots of space there, so we should and can use much larger bolts. So also it does almost fit in there, but you do need to square off the circular hole, and then there's not enough meat there to go with a larger size. It looks like we've got a little bit of a crack in the existing firewall. So my thinking is we do need to put a new firewall in here. Now we do also need to add that much space to the standoff or to the engine standoff from the firewall. So we can also make that up in the firewall itself, or we can add spacers, or we can make up almost all of it and then add washers if we need to. So there's a couple options there. One of my primary concerns with this plane is just making sure that we get this bolt pattern back to where it was or is. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out a piece of paper or cardboard that's going to fit into this square opening, and then we're going to cut this firewall out. We're going to install a larger firewall or thicker firewall, and probably put some screws through the side as well too. And I think that's going to be probably the best solution. And then also we'll be able to fully shape out the new insert for the Xicoy engines. I've been thinking about this now for a few days. A few days ago was the last time I had this plane on the video. And I think that's the best solution, just to go ahead and replace that firewall. It's going to be the most permanent solution, best solution, and strongest solution going forward. So step number one right now is I'm going to make that template and get that all lined up. All right, guys, so here's some information for you. So this template is for obviously the existing bolt pattern. Now you can see on there the original firewall is 1/4 inch ply or 6 millimeters. That's this firewall here. The spacers for the engine, meaning this, are 21/64 or 8.62 millimeters. Now the remaining space from the existing firewall to the outside edge here is about 7 millimeters. It's hard to measure it because of the goop and stuff all over that. So it's going to be really close if we bring this firewall right out to the edge. Now this angle of this firewall is 3 degrees to the right hand side, sitting from the pilot's view. So I've got my angle finder here, and we can put that on the side of the firewall, and we can measure across, and we can see that it is 87 degrees ish, so somewhere in that vicinity. But anyways, we've got the measurement there, and that gives us our angle that we need to set it at, but we can also just line it up with the outside edge here. So anyways, next thing to do is going to be the crappy stuff, which is cutting all this stuff out. I think the easiest way to do that is going to be with my multi-tool, my Milwaukee multi-tool with my wood blade, and I'll just basically go through and work my way all the way around and just chop this this firewall out. Obviously we're going to avoid those metal bits as best as we can, and I'm going to have a vacuum up here to suck up as much dust as possible. That's the next step. All right guys, that is the firewall taken out. This is quickly becoming one of the more handy tools in my arsenal. I love this multi-tool thing. It's pretty phenomenal. So we got the big chunks out. Made really quick work of it. Now what we're going to do is we'll probably take one of my my planes, like plane, and just clean up some of this balsa and stuff that doesn't need to be there. And we'll get a nice fresh starting point to put the new firewall on. All right guys, so there is 2 1/4 inch pieces of plywood. I actually ended up keeping those balsa quarters installed, so we had stops and it gets the angle set properly, so there's no reason to take those out. Obviously this side was still in good shape, the other ones weren't in great shape, but it's enough to stop the plywood where it needs to go. So that's all done. Now we've got 2 pieces. They're a nice snug fit, so now we can work on getting those glued into place. We are going to screw in, once this is installed and cured, we are going to screw in some screws into the firewall itself. We are using Hysol to glue this in place, so it's going to be very strong. All right guys, we are back here working on the PC21. We've made some good progress on this firewall. I just want to throw a quick shout out to all of you guys that watched the videos while we were filming this video. Hit 10,000 subscribers, which is absolutely mind-blowing. I remember when I first started this channel about 1.5 years ago, 1 year and 7 months ago. Getting to 100 subscribers was an amazing milestone. Getting to that first 1,000 was absolutely bonkers, and now we've hit 10,000, which is super cool. So thank you guys for all your support, for watching the videos, and for subscribing and liking and all that kind of stuff, and for just being part of the channel. So thank you. All right guys, so next thing we need to do is the cutout for the engine. So if you look at the diagram, this is pulled directly from the Xicoy website or the manual. They've got the firewall cutout. Now the firewall cutout is 73 millimeters by 73 millimeters. This 90 designation is actually the spacings from side to side, and then 50 is the other bolt spacing. So what we've done is we've got the previous mounting points for the Wren engine, which was marked on our template. And then what I did was I made up a 73 millimeter by 73 millimeter square, visually got that centered as best as possible, drew the Sharpie line, and now we are going to make that cutout. So we're not going to do any drilling yet. We're going to do the cutout first, then do the drilling afterwards once we're happy with the position. So firewall's been glued in place. That's all nice and solid. We are still going to pin this with some screws as well throughout the firewall. So just keep that in mind, but I'll show you guys that as well too. So next step, cut that out. All right, guys, so we got the cutout done. First thing I did was use the multi-tool. Again, love this thing. And we cut out the 73 millimeters by 73 millimeters. So that hole was done. And then we need cutouts for the bolts and the lube line. For that, I used my Dremel with my carbide bit, 1/4 inch carbide bit, and just slowly worked at this to make it fit. So the lube line's right there in the middle. That needs to be fairly deep. And now the engine fits in there very nicely. So if we look at all of the holes through the engine mount into the firewall, everything lines up nicely. Now we do have some adjustment side to side. We can get more adjustment if we needed to by opening the firewall up a little bit. But the goal with this is I'm going to get this kind of loosely or roughly bolted in place. We're going to check the fit and finish with the engine against the cowl and see how everything works before we do our final bolts that are going to hold the engine on. All right, so I've installed the engine just with 2 wood screws, number 6 wood screws. So, and using little washer things on there. So that's holding the engine in place. And if we look at the other open holes, we are basically centered right on the previous Wren holes with this engine. So it's definitely not a permanent installation, but what we can do now is get that cowl installed and see how it fits. All right, there's the temporary mounting of the engine, guys. The cowl's not bolted in place, but it's got the way it sits, it kind of locks in place. So you can see here that we are really, really close to having this absolutely perfect. So we're a little bit low to the 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock mark. So if you're to refer to the center as the middle of the clock, obviously we're coming down to 7 o'clock. So if we take this and shift it to 1 o'clock, that's going to put us pretty much in the right spot. So you can see we've got a bit of cowl showing on this portion here. So all we need to do is adjust that engine up and over slightly. Not much, but really, really happy with how easy that bolts up. And there's a little side shot for you. All right, guys, so we know that we need to go up to about 1 o'clock or up in this direction. So what I'll do now is I'm going to see if we've got enough adjustment with the existing bolts. I don't think we do, but we've got this one and then the other one down in the corner there. So we can just drill those in the right spot. So we will drill it a little bit to that 1 o'clock position, and that should probably provide enough adjustment for the engine itself. So we'll see what how that all works out. All right, guys, so and I reinstalled the engine, and there wasn't enough movement in the previous bolt. So I re-drilled those 2, and I've drilled them out further and installed a metric 5mm Allen bolt, along with a blind nut on this one, and then a reverse blind nut on that side there. So it's just a blind nut that's flipped over, and we'll glue that one in place. So anyway, so that is what we're doing. Then when we put the engine up, we'll be able to mark the other 2 holes, the very first holes that we installed, and then be able to do those as well. All right, guys, and through adjusting that engine, we now have an absolutely pretty much perfect fit. Obviously, we're going to play with that as much as possible, but we're even top and bottom, even side to side. All right, guys, I know we've been looking at the front of this plane for a long time. Engine is mounted, so it worked out beautifully. I'll put the top of the cowl on. Top of the cowl is installed. Now we'll put the Vario prop on. And there she is. Looks absolutely beautiful. The fit is amazing. Now, I don't know if I'll be able to show you, but I did set the engine back just a fraction, and we may keep it there, we may space it out, but we've got a really tight fit on that cone to the cowl joint. Now we do have a little bit of fiberglass kind of sticking out, so I want to make sure that that won't interfere, but the fit is really, really nice. So really happy with that. This Vario prop setup we are not using because it's had a ground contact, I think, before, so this is just for fit, but we'll be using the new one for the final installation. All right, guys, so next thing we're going to do is take the engine back off and make our spacer plates. Now, I have kind of conceded that we are too tight to the cowl with the prop nut here, or whatever you want to call that thing. So we do need to space that out about 1/8 of an inch. I think that is about 2-3 millimeters or something like that. So I'm just going to take the engine out, and we are going to make some plates that fit behind the engine mounting. All right, guys, so I have these spacers. I don't know what thickness ply this is, but it's 2.5 millimeters thick-ish, and that's exactly where we need it to be to bring this engine spacing back to where the Wren was. So these fit nicely on the engine rails. We've got one cutout for the lubrication tube, so hopefully this is the last time we install this engine into the airframe. All right, so one of the reasons that I spaced the engine out as far as I did the previous engine, yes, we've got a little bit more gap between the nose area and the back plate of the spinner, but really the primary reason was the exhaust. So the exhaust, I think, is identical to the Wren, very, very close. I think it feels like it's a little bit back further, but I'm just guessing. Anyways, so if I tightened this gap up a little bit, what would happen is we'd have to cut a way more of this opening out for the exhaust pipes. So this side is quite centered, front to back. It's just a little bit different position here, where I'm just going to clean that up a little bit as well too. So anyways, now we don't have to cut a bunch out of the cowl, and we still have reasonable spacing. And center-wise, everything is awesome. All right, guys, so we are changing up the ventilation system on this engine a little bit, so we have to do a couple things beforehand. So right now we've got air inputs here, air inputs on the bottom, and that's how it was designed previously with the Wren. The air intake was coming in the front here. There's also some makeup air intakes at the back. It's roughly about this much space in the back part of the fuselage on the underside. So what we want to do is we want to basically cover these two top holes, and we're trying to get air to come in here and get air to be forced into the turbine section. So that's the reason we're going to cover these top holes. What we're trying to avoid is air coming in, going over the exhaust, and then back into the turbine itself. Every degree increase in temperature that goes into the turbine increases the temperature of the exhaust or temperature of the turbine by 4 degrees. So big difference if that air is preheated before it goes into the turbine. So we're going to cover those two top holes. Other thing I've done is bent up a brass tube here, and this is going to be the channel for the RPM sensor. Now we're just going to do some mounting with zip ties in this section. Hopefully heat-wise that stands up. There should be a substantial amount of air flowing over it. And then we will also have a mounting system up here as well too, so it should be nice and solid. We'll just drill a hole and run the wire through. And for the RPM sensor, we're going to do up a custom lead with the Powerbox Maxi wire. The Powerbox wire is extremely resistant to heat, and so we'll make up a custom lead with that wire. So it's going to run through the brass tube to this section where it will go inside the fuselage and run to the data hub. All right, guys, so we're making good progress here. We've got the line run for the RPM sensor that runs back, put a little grommet in the firewall here in the side, and the line is now run, and it's too long right now, so we'll just cut that to be the right length. The cover plate's been installed. We put a little keeper made of aluminum to hold this in place, and we've also installed goop on this end and that end, and run the wires in and out a little bit, so we've got the wire sitting nice and solid in goop, and it's not going to chafe on the metal or brass tubing and wear through the wire. So that's all done. We put a little zip tie around there because there's little holes for a zip tie. And last thing I did here in the front section, and I talked about this earlier in the video, was pinning the firewall. We just used servo screws for that, so we pinned all the way around the firewall. So the engine is really permanently installed now at this point. Other thing we did was we pulled out the Wren and all the components, so now we are basically clean on the install. We do still have the UAT, which we're going to reuse, and of course we've got the CM Jets tank with the lighter side of RC logo installed. Again, thank you, Carlos, for supplying this tank for this airplane. You did a great job. It's going to fit beautifully. So next thing to do, guys, is we're just basically going to lay out the components. Now, the turbine batteries and all the batteries on this plane previously were located in the back here. The turbine battery is going to have to be set somewhere at the front, but we can do that CFG check before the plane is flown. And fortunately with this aircraft, there's lots of mounting points for batteries and stuff, so it's pretty easy to zip tie the battery wherever it needs to go. So that'll be fairly simple. I'm just gonna work on installing those components in a reasonable manner, and I will show you guys the result, or if I come across anything weird. Alright guys, so tank is installed. I just want to show you Carlos's or CM Jet's setup here. So the tanks all come with a clunk line already done up, already done for you. You can also specify the fittings that you want. I love this stuff. Really heavy clunk as well too in here. So great setup. Again, thank you, Carlos at CM Jets, for doing this up. It's absolutely awesome. I love your tanks. So we've got the tank positioned. C of G is basically right here, 210 behind the leading edge, which is actually there, but I think the owner had it set up right there. So anyways, our tank is right over our C of G, just a hair in front of it. And then now we'll just put the rest of the parts into the front portion of the aircraft. Alright guys, so we got everything basically installed. I installed a Festo valve mount, or a on-off valve mount. These are available at the lighter side of rc.com. There's a link down below. That's my shameless plug. Very, very cool things that my 3D printing guy makes. And they also come with a drill template guide. So really nice little bit where you put it in there and you can drill out the holes, and everything's really simple to install. So pretty simple install here. The reason I've left things the way I did is I put as much as I could back here, because we're going to have to put the battery probably in the nose. So it's pretty straightforward. We've got the line going into the pump. The Xicoy manual talks about putting the filter on the intake side of the pump. That's kind of an important thing. And then the output side comes to our on-off valve, which is there, and goes straight to the turbine. So pretty simple simple setup. Also, these line holders are available on the lighter side of rc.com. So anyways guys, so that is the turbine install, and basically the equipment for the turbine is done. All right, so the mock-up prop assembly from Vario is installed. Now this comes with a spacer. Now this is the one I've already cut a piece off of. So the stock setup is roughly about that long. And then we had a spare one of these, so I basically made a piece a little bit bigger than this one. Now the reason for that is the portion that sticks inside the spacers is on the back of this prop nut. I'll take this apart and show you. So this bolt assembly is from True Turn. This one's still a little bit long, so I had to add 2 of those washers on there, but works just fine and spins nice and true. So back of the prop nut, there's this little insert that fits inside those spacers. So this part here fits inside the spacer assemblies, which you can kind of see the inner ring right there. So anyways guys, that is how it's set up. Lengthwise, I put it just behind this face, so when we tighten this all up, it's going to compress everything nicely and hold it all in place. So I just put the cone on. Now keep in mind, again, this is the rough setup, and with that cone on, giving it a quick spin here, it spins nice and true. So sometimes on these setups, I found that your stuff's just not running true, so it's important to check that. So I'll give this a spin and just take a look at the nose cone here while I spin this, and just look at how true this spins. Yeah. All the installation is done here. We've got a couple things just to tie up. So first thing is, the owner cut this brace out before to put the larger tank in, the Dubro tank. So we're going to put this brace back together. I've glued it in place with a couple drops of CA. Now these are just sacrificial pieces, so when this is all glued back in with epoxy, we'll use Hysol. We can just cut these off, and they'll just be gone basically. So that's how we're going to put that back in. So that's been glued, and we just need to use the Hysol on that. And the last thing we need to figure out is how to get the prop or cone to work on this setup. So previously what would happen is the prop nut was a 4mm prop nut that went in like this. And then we had this cone, or this piece, which went through the cone like that. While this new prop nut is a 5mm thread. So basically we need to find some sort of adapter, or make it, to go from 4mm metric, obviously, to 5mm, and to be able to connect those together. So on the hunt, or trying to figure out something for that, but that's how we need to make that nose cone work. Alright guys, so the final thing we're going to do on this plane is I'm going to take my plane and plane down this stuff that we added here, and that's going to take care of essentially everything that we can do on this plane right now. So with that being done, guys, basically this aircraft is done as far as we can do. I was going to check the CFG, but we don't have the wing tube, so we can't check the CFG, but we'll do that at the field, and we'll get the battery positioned where it's going to go. So we do have a fairly heavy battery that we can play with that the owner's going to put in this plane, and then we need to come up with that adapter setup for the nose cone. So that is essentially the final things that we need to do. Alright guys, and that is everything for this episode. We will do a follow-up on this plane once it is CFG'd, maidened, and all that kind of stuff, or remaidened, reflown. That's the plan anyways. So the next video involving this plane, we will just check over the CFG. We'll do some test runs on the turboprop, and then we'll do a maiden flight with this turboprop. Now keep in mind again that we will have to keep the RPM lower on this turboprop for the first hour. So if you guys have any questions about everything we covered in this video, make sure you list them down below. Don't forget to just comment down below, give the video a thumbs up, hit that like button, and also hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. A ton of you guys that watch the videos have not subscribed to the channel. At least that's what YouTube tells me. So it's free to do so. Hit that subscribe button, help the channel out, and we'll see you in the next video.